we take the same approach everywhere, which is we look for exceptional founders and we support them from day zero all the way through to the exit of their company. And it is this common focus across all of these ecosystems in working with brilliant people and helping them, particularly at the inception, particularly at that early stage of the business, that sets us apart from other investors because we are effectively earlier than others, and we are building a skill set and a knowledge base globally about how you conceive and launch companies successfully. And I think that is particularly appealing in this age where a lot of companies have been created, and not just in the historical, centers of technology, but indeed all around the globe.
Hey everyone, this is Prashant and I'll be your host for the VC 10X podcast. And today we have Bede Moore with us. Bede was the founding partner of Antler Australia and is now the firm's chief commercial officer. Before Antler, Bede was the CEO of Sydney's peak technology industry body, TechSydney, and prior to this, he was the co-founder and managing director of Indonesia's largest e-commerce site, Lazada, which was acquired by Alibaba in 2017 for $3.5 billion. Antler was recently recognized as the world's most active angel and seed stage investor by Pitchbook. In this episode, we talk about how Antler invests at the day zero stage, what is Antler and how it's different from other VC funds, the Antler residency program, the best channels for marketing for VCs, how they identify quality founders at the day zero stage, Bede's biggest learning investing and building startups over the years, and lots more. So, without wasting any time, let's dive straight in. This episode is sponsored by my own podcasting agency called Podcast 10X, where I help VCs start and run their own podcast. While I was running VC 10X, this podcast that you're listening to right now, I asked my VC guests, why don't you start your own podcast? I mean, it's the best form of marketing for VCs. As they say, VC is a people play more than even a capital play. A podcast enables you to put your people at the front, your portfolio founders, your partners, and co investors. It's a great way to build a brand and win competitive deals. It activates all your marketing channels in a single shot, be it YouTube or blog post or newsletter or social media. Everything gets activated in a single shot. And I get the same response from all the VCs that it's a lot of work and we don't have the time for it. I said, all right, let me handle the work for you, from pre recording, editing, publishing to making social media clips. All you have to do is show up on a call, hit record, do the recording using the well researched outline we provide you with, and you're done. We handle everything else. You know what they said? All right, let's give it a shot. So if you are a VC and want to up your marketing and branding game, I'd love to work with you. And if you're thinking there are too many VC podcasts already, remember there are way more VC firms out there. And if you're not standing out, you're losing out. So if you want to work with me on starting your podcast, go to podcast10x.com and book a call today. I'll add the link in the description and show notes below. Look forward to working with you. Hey B, it's so good to have you on the VC10X podcast. How you doing?
I'm really well. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you on the show. And to start things off, can we first have your story and how you started investing?
Um, well, yes, it's a bit of a circuitous path, to be honest. I left university wanting to be a historian and went down that path for a little while and realized that although I was curious, I wanted to do a little bit more operating. And so I kind of started my life professionally at Boston Consulting Group for a few years, first in Australia and then actually moved to Indonesia because I was really interested about the ecosystem that was developing there. And it was when I was living there that I got approached to build an e-commerce retailer. And I mean, it's extraordinary today talking about it only 12 years later, but at that point in time, there were only four sites that were transacting in Indonesia at all, right? Like it was the very, very beginning of tech in Indonesia. and it sounded like an extraordinary opportunity. And so I co-founded a company there called Lazada, which is a big e-commerce retailer, and this was what really ignited my passion for being in tech specifically. And I had then many years, so the kind of next 6 to 7 years of my career were kind of building and running various different technology companies. And it was the kind of interesting thing was that after that, I moved back to Australia and had been was trying to work out what I was gonna do next. And actually, I got contacted by a venture firm here who suggested, that I come on as a GP. And I started looking at it and I thought, this is very interesting because in a certain sense, there's a lot of similarities between being a historian. It's the research, it's thinking about big themes, it's looking at who are the major actors, and, founders, obviously, in this case. And so I called my friend and former colleague Magnus, and I said, "Listen, I'm kind of looking at becoming an investor, and I'm interested to know what you think about it." And he said to me, "Well, it's funny that you say that because I've just founded a company called Antler, and I really think that you should come and do it with us instead of this other role that you're looking at." And so, in a sense, that's how I became an investor. I flew to Singapore, and we talked about what Antler was going to be, and I was captivated by the idea, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's such an amazing story. And let's talk about Antler. What was the idea that was pitched to you back then to get you in the team? And what has it become now? Has it
Mm.
changed at all?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I mean, it plays a little bit on my experience in Indonesia. We tried to build companies in Indonesia. We had success there, obviously, but one of the big differences is obviously I was building companies as an outsider. Didn't have a network, didn't have connections, and I could really understand really what the disadvantages of that really were. And so fast forward to being back in Singapore and talking to Magnus about Antler, and he said, "Listen, B, we're going to build a venture capital firm, and our focus is going to be people. It's going to be finding the most talented people, and we're going to look for them everywhere. We're going to go into every major technology ecosystem, and we're going to look for the most talented individuals there. And it doesn't really matter whether they have existing relationships. It doesn't really matter if they're networked, if they have connections to money. We just want to find the most brilliant and driven entrepreneurs, and we want to work with them." Um, and that really resonated with me. This idea that we could enable people to build great technology companies all around the world, and that the focus was going to be on them and on the founders in this very clear and precise way, um, from day zero, right? So from the very inception of the business. And I found, I continue to find on a daily basis that that's a very exciting mission to help people make progress inevitable, by building great companies.
Yeah, totally agree. And has the model of investing, how investing is done at Antler, has that changed at all from those inception years to how it is being done now?
Um, I mean, in principle, no, and that's what's been so amazing about it. And one of the things that I've liked. So just briefly as a digression, my history inside the company was Magnus uh, convinced me to come to start our fund in Australia. So I launched our first fund in Australia, and that was back in 2019. And then I took responsibility for building our business across APAC, so India, Korea, Japan, and China. And one of the things that's fascinating is, you build in all of these different markets, and of course, every time you start in a new market, everybody says, "Oh, things are different here. This is a different market. You need to understand the precise way that it operates." And of course, there's some truth to that, but the underlying concept of how to invest in great companies is universal, and it is finding exceptional people and backing them from from day zero all the way, to exit. And that is, that's been the mission from the very beginning, and it has remained consistent. Now, sure, there are some operational changes and bits and pieces that have led to modifications over time, but no, ultimately, what's been great about it is been a very consistent project for the last 6 years.
Right, totally. And how do you define exceptional people? Because it can be defined maybe in two ways. That one is that people coming from proven backgrounds, from maybe educational backgrounds, maybe from their work experience perspective. That's one. The other is the people who have been rebellious, right? So how do you define exceptional talent?
Mm. You just provided your audience with a wonderful dichotomy, and I think you're spot on, right? I mean, um, certainly there are hallmarks, people who have come from top schools, have top academic records, have built companies previously. All of these things are naturally great indicators that somebody could be an excellent entrepreneur, and those are historically the sorts of signals that venture firms look for, right? Um, but of course, as you would know, getting access to a lot of these places often is a consequence of privilege, or it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great founder, and so it's very, very easy to overlook the second category that you're talking about, which is the rebels, who are the fun, who are the exciting ones, and who are the breakouts, right? And who very often bring with them a kind of an energy and a ferocity um, to the work that they're doing. And so what we try to do is we try to have this open mindedness and curiosity, and say, look, let's try and meet as many people as we can. Let's select the best ones to come and work with us closely in a residency over a period of time, and let's observe them and hear from them their story and how they want to build a company, and make a conclusion. And irrespective of if they sit in the brand name category or the rebels category, if they're a great operator and they can deliver, we want to work with them.
Right, totally. And talking about Antler, there are like a world of VC firms out there now, right? So if you had to explain what Antler is to a complete newbie who doesn't know anything about Antler, if you have to
Mm.
introduce it to them, how do you introduce it to them, and how does Antler stand apart?
Yeah, well, Antler is the world's most active early stage venture capital firm in the world. We have 27 locations across pretty much every major technology ecosystem. And we take the same approach everywhere, which is we look for exceptional founders and we support them from day zero all the way through to the exit of their company. And it is this common focus across all of these ecosystems in working with brilliant people and helping them, particularly at the inception, particularly at that early stage of the business, that sets us apart from other investors, because we are effectively earlier than others, and we are building a skill set and a knowledge base globally about how you conceive and launch companies successfully. And I think that is particularly appealing in this age where a lot of companies are being created, and not just in the historical centers of technology, but indeed all around the globe. And I think that that's what has led to such a large and continuing increase in applications to come and work with us, is that people realize that they're in a globally competitive world and they want to work with a firm that has deep expertise across multiple markets in this precise thing of launching a company.
Right, totally. And also share more about the Antler residency program.
Sure. Yeah. I think the the thing to say about the way that how we are looking to find people is that Anna wants to build a relationship with each founder that we invest in, and we do this through a residency. So people from pretty much anywhere can apply to come and work with us, and then we select the top people to come and join us in a residency. And residency is 10 weeks in most cases. of working side by side, not just with the Antler team in the given location, but also, about 80 other potential co-founders, and people from all different backgrounds and at different, stages in the evolution of their idea. They come, they work with us, they often form into teams, and work with a coach towards receiving an investment, from Antler. And those paths, the paths that you might take in the course of that residency, they obviously differ considerably. But from our perspective, the course is very similar, which is to say, we are looking to observe and relate with those founders and understand what singles them out as potentially great founders, and that's the purpose of the residency from our perspective. And the purpose from their perspective is, well, hey, I'm here. I am at day zero of my company. This is going to be a long journey, and I want to build. I want to meet and know that the partners that I got alongside me for the entire ride are the right people. And so that's how that's how it plays out. Those are the common features for everybody across the globe who works with us.
Right, totally. And in this program, how's the investment structured? So let's say a founder gets selected to the residency program. Is this some amount of investment that's going to get to them upfront so that they can start working with that, and then there will be a later bigger round that's going to potentially come from Antler if they are successful in the residency program? How's that structured?
The key investment that we make is the investment, as I said, during the investment committee at around about 10 weeks. And I say around about because, of course, it's one of the things I love about this is, the number of founders that I've seen and the different paths that people go on. And I've seen cases where teams within a week have constructed a product, they've got it live, and they start getting users incredibly quickly. And you can just see and hear when you work with these people that they are top founders, and so they go to an IC incredibly quickly. Other people take a little bit longer to hit on the right idea, but in general, the path is similar, and it's around about 10 weeks, and that's the point at which Antler makes its kind of fundamental, or its anchor investment. And then in the majority of our funds, our intention is to continue supporting those founders all the way throughout their founder journey. So that means, following on when there are credible investor leads, and for breakout companies, continuing to invest in them through our Elevate fund, which is our global follow-on fund.
That's awesome. So basically, when a founder gets selected to a residency program, they get to come to your facility and work with your mentors. That's the benefit upfront they're getting. And then later they have a chance at getting an investment from you. There's no upfront commitment of an investment, right?
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, and
Yeah.
and again, if you think about, probably the way to think about it from the perspective as an investor, that residency is our due diligence period, and the due diligence is the opportunity for us to spend a lot of time interacting with the founders, because
Right.
it's very hard to understand this until you've done it. But really, what you start to learn is the way that they operate, and you get these little tidbits of information that are um, incredibly instructive as to as to how they will operate. I mean, I'll give you an example. We're invested in this extraordinary men's fertility testing business here in Australia. And the two founders, the kind of, one of the important modifications is it allows men to do fertility testing in the privacy of their own home, which has historically been an issue because of the technology. And they came up with this idea, and they invented the substance that would allow this to be possible. But it was during COVID, and there were, many of your listeners won't know, but very stringent lockdowns in Melbourne, Victoria during the course of COVID. And these two guys really worked out that they could get around the city if they were Uber drivers. And so they became Uber drivers in order to facilitate the creation of this company, and to collect the samples whilst they were working as Uber and whilst they were being entrepreneurs. And when you hear that, and you hear about their ability to take a problem that they encounter and think of some sort of clever way around it. When you start to see that from a founder on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, you realize that each time, because this is essentially what building a company is like, right? You're constantly having obstacles thrown in your path, and if you can always think of lateral or creative ways to solve it, then this is what separates great entrepreneurs from the rest. And so that's what the purpose of the residency is from our perspective.
Yeah, totally. That's an amazing story there. And you've worked across different markets in the APAC region. You are yourself from Australia and have worked in emerging markets like India. So tell us how these different markets that you've worked in are emerging and taking shape, and which one do you think is kind of the most promising and the most fastest growing?
Well, I'll say a couple of things about that. You're right. I have had. I think it's unusual. I have had the privilege of being, in the Indonesian tech ecosystem, then in the Australian, and then obviously now setting up venture funds in 3 or 4 other APAC markets. And the first observation I'll make is just how common how common the market is or how common the sorts of founders and the problems that you come across are, and um, that there is really one global community working on a lot of these bigger these bigger questions that generate progress, right? Because a lot of the companies, they're disruptive, and what they create is progress, is evolution, commercial evolution, right? And I love that. So, I can sit on an IC in Australia 1 week, and then the following week I sit on an IC in India, and you hear people trying to solve similar problems from two obviously very different markets, kind of culturally. And I love that about it. The the What I will say though, in terms of differences, is you do see differences in the way that in how technology ecosystems have evolved, right? And so there are two components to that. Um, and this is as we move along. If you look at, for example, Australia, the Australian technology ecosystem was really developed as a consequence of a couple of major tech companies being built here. Where to technology, which nobody's ever heard of, but which is essentially the foundation of Google Maps, that Google bought in the early 2000s and converted into Google Maps, and has led to Google having a very large presence and engineering presence in Australia, and of course Atlassian, whose products probably a majority of your listeners use. Both Australian companies, both built here before there was really a tech ecosystem, and this generated the engineering and the company creation skills that have enabled Australia to now produce some of the largest private software companies in the world, like Canva. So that's one thing, which is what is this how sophisticated, how many large and global technology companies exist within an ecosystem that are enabling that are helping fuel the growth. And then the other thing is the maturity of the venture capital environment. How many angels are there? How many seed funds who are dedicated at seed? People with sophisticated understanding of early stage companies. These are the things that you see in places like India and Southeast Asia, which I think are actually, in a lot of ways, even though they're even though in Southeast Asia's case, it's a younger ecosystem. I think it's still more mature than what we have in Australia or New Zealand or even Korea, even though these are in many cases larger and more mature economies. And so those things have all contribute to differences across the different ecosystems, at least within this region.
Right, totally. And since Antler is investing at the day zero stage, as you call it, uh, what are the most important things that founders need help with at that stage?
Um, well, what they need help with is helping to refine what the business model is going to look like, and typically a substantial proportion of that work goes towards developing the go to market, right? For me, for me, it's a real giveaway when I look at when I'm trying to talk to founders. The place that I want to be working with them is around, well, how are you going to launch this business, and what are the assumptions that you're using that underpin that go to market strategy, because it's very instructive about how they will think commercially and how they will act commercially. And so um, I think this is a real special, that is the specialization, right? Is because you ultimately, what you're doing is you work with you find a great founder, you work with them in developing their idea. A particular component of that is the GTM, and you do that at high volume as an Antler GP, and so you become particularly good at this particular skill set, and that is what makes us useful, but it is also what tells us a lot about how good a founder is. So I think they learn a lot from that type of interaction with us. And then the other interesting thing that you encounter is, obviously, Antler takes a pretty substantial portion of second-time founders, but not everybody's a second-time founder, and a lot of people who built great companies are first-time founders, right? And very often they don't have expertise raising capital, and thinking about how to construct a team and finding the right talent for their company. And so these are the other two areas where we are active as advisors and instructors, helping people understand the importance of running a good fundraising process, how you do that, how you close capital, how you bring great people on. These skills are the essential ingredients for any founder, and they're relevant. It doesn't. You can even be a late stage fund, and you say that you're still looking for these things. So they are the kind of enduring criteria for what makes a great founder at every level of a business. We just help people to ensure that they are cultivating them from day zero.
Yeah, totally. And from what I've learned, 40% of the time of GPs at Antler goes into scouting for founders at those super early stages. So, how do you scout for founders that are at that day zero stage? Are there any techniques that maybe are shared across the board with Antler's GPs, that these are the techniques you can follow, these are the pathways, and this is where to find these founders? So, tell us more about that.
Mm. Well, again, Prashant, you are the one who defined so succinctly at the beginning of this call what what our two options are. So maybe I should be deferring to you on this, but um, you're right in saying, on the one hand, of course, you're looking for people with a clear and proven track record of development, and you can see it if somebody's been to a top school, or they've studied CS or economics or commerce, or one of these things with top markets, or top marks, or they've been in a top performing company in a really significant department for many years. All of these things are great signals. You also look, though, as you said, you look for the rebels. You listen, and you listen to you listen to their stories. And a big part about what I say to GPs is, hey, listen, you've got to, there are two things you really need to, or three things you really need to do. The first is you got to love talking to people, right? Because fundamentally that's what we're doing. We're out trying to find brilliant people. You got to really enjoy interacting with them. The second thing is you have to be curious. You've got to ask them questions about themselves and about the things that they've done in life, to see if you can uncover some cool trait about them. And then you've got to observe. You've got to observe what they've done. One of my favorite founders, actually, in Australia, is actually an Indian guy. I'll give you, I remember meeting him for my interview, and the first thing he told me was, he'd started his career as in equities with Goldman Sachs in Mumbai. And I think it's probably fair to say that must be one of the most competitive jobs to get in the world. Like, how many applicants are there to that job, right? It's so that's the first cab off the rank. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm listening. And then he talked about how he was there, but he wanted to go and build companies, and so he went and worked for a couple of the large um, big Indian tech companies of the day, and then his partner got a job in Australia, and so he had decided to move with her, and they'd come, and they had been in Australia for 3 weeks, and he said, and I've been here for 3 weeks, and I just thought, well, there's no better time. I'm going to go and build a company, and I thought, so here is this person with an extraordinary background who has got great skills, and who is prepared to take great risk, and is enthusiastic, and enthusiastic about doing so. I want to look at this guy. I want to work with him further, right? And so that's what you're looking for in your interviewing process. We say to GPs is like, try and find out what the personal what details can you get from that personal story that indicate, hey, this is a person who has those core ingredients that are going to make them a great founder.
Right, totally. And is there any data on that front, that what kind of founders succeed more often? Is it the ones with proven backgrounds, or is it the ones who just have a rebellious nature and happen to start a company and it works out? Any data on that front?
Um, I don't think that we've got specific data on it to date to be able to prove one way or other, right? And in part because it becomes quite subjective. If you think about some of the stories that I've told, the two of the stories I've told you today, right? Those are observations about somebody's character, and they extend obviously beyond the brand names that those guys work for or whatever else. So they're about the way that those people operate. It's very hard to quantify that, right? And that's why you asked me, what's the thing that we do to get our partners, how are we trying to drive success? Well, the answer is, well, we tell partners to spend 40% of their time on scouting, because this is where they will hear the stories in person and be able to make those subjective judgments that are the ones that matter for our LPs and investors.
Right, totally. And let's talk about the funnel for investments at Antler. So
Mm.
tell us, how big is a cohort size, and is it only it runs once per year, or is it like twice per year? Tell us about that. And how many people are selected per cohort, and then eventually how many actually end up getting the investment?
Yeah. Um, so typically there are about 100. Sorry, there are about 80 people within a cohort. It can range from um, it can range from 60 to 100, and it also they also in regions where we have multiple multi-fund regions. So as an example, in Southeast Asia or in the Nordics, the cohorts get a little larger. The and that's just a feature of how many people we've got committed to working on it, within Antler. Um, there isn't we don't have a set we don't have set targets for how many investments that we want to make, right? You hope that you could invest in every single one of them. It's obviously and it was when we first started Antler, a lot of the people who came and worked with us were very worried that we had these kind of limits or ceilings to how many investments we want to make. We say, hey, we want to invest in as many great entrepreneurs as we can possibly find. So it differs considerably, from market to market, and also from cohort to cohort. The second to last most recent one that was done in Australia was about 80 people for 8 investments, but again it moves up and down.
Great. And is it like a twice a year program, or?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So again, most of our markets operate two residencies per year. In some places there are three residencies per year. It's again, it's a little bit a feature of, well, how many people are there? How large is the market? How large is the Antler team? But the standard is two residencies per year.
Right, awesome. And at the end of the residency, and is there an end of a residency? Because you said that some of them get an investment at the end of a 10 weeks period, and some keep going on in that journey and maybe get an investment offer later in the journey. So, is there a dedicated end to a cohort, or is it not fixed?
There's a dedicated end to a residency, but
Okay.
but one hopes not to our relationship with the founders, either those obviously those that we made an investment into, but also those who we didn't. Interestingly, what I think is about to be our most highly valued company in Fund One in Australia, we declined the founder in one residency. He came back 9 months later, and we invested in it, and now I think it's going to be I think it's likely to be our top company. And so this is a very important lesson, when we oftentimes we the advice or what we're saying is, hey, we're not ready to invest now or in this business, and not no to you and no to a relationship. And so yeah, I constantly aspire to have enduring relationships with people that extend well beyond the couple of months that they work with us. But yes, in regards to, hey, well, there's this within the residency, there's this intensity of having weekly meetings with teams that you're working in, and obviously it's not possible to do that on an enduring basis with the number of people that we work with. So that's what brings it to an end.
Right, totally. And is there a fixed offer that you make at Antler, or does that vary from company to company?
It is a fixed offer, but it does differ slightly from market to market. And for listeners of yours who are thinking about going down the entrepreneurial path and want to work with us, the simple way to find out what those terms are is to just go to our website, antler.co/apply, and you can find it, and we'll be provided the details there on a market by market basis.
Right. And do you guys also organize a YC style demo day at the end of the cohort? Is that something you do?
Yeah, we do. We have done, and we do in some markets. It is dependent on how what the local partners assess. But yes, within the kind of wider context of, hey, do you ensure that your entrepreneurs are put in front of interested investors, and do you help them to raise that ongoing round? The answer is certainly. It's just that the format for that differs slightly in each place, and particularly also depending on the number of investments that you're making out of each fund. But I think if you think about Antler, the work that we do as partners and as a firm, our our biggest priority is to find great people and then to help them find money. Those are the two things that we work on and that govern the vast majority of our work. And we think that that's in the best interests of our investors and also the founders who we've invested in.
Right, totally. And now you're also leading marketing, global marketing for Antler, right?
Mm.
And brand building is an important aspect for VCs, right? So give us an insight into how you're looking at it at Antler, and what do you think are the best marketing channels for VCs?
um, Well, it's like with all marketing, right? It's you want to put the right product in the right place at the right price, so to speak. That's the original the original e-commerce kind of marketing toolkit. I think that for us, um, we want people to understand our expertise in this in this day zero investing, right? And we are talking to not just we are talking to repeat founders because they realize that what we offer is not just this expertise at the beginning, but that we are a long-term capital partner and thought partner to them in building their businesses, and potentially, in many cases beyond the borders of wherever they launch the company. And so our intention from a marketing perspective is simply to talk about that expertise with specificity, and also to allow our founders to kind of talk about our message and to talk about the experience that they've had with us. I think one of the things that I most love about investing really early stage is the relationships you build. I think it's a great privilege to work with so many great and exceptional people, and you build very trusting long-term relationships. Um, you go through, of course, some good times. You also go through a lot of bad times with people, and you need to be there for them. And they can tell that story better than we can. And so we often we work with our founders to do that. Is the second thing I'd say with regards to the implications more broadly to other venture capitalists. Again, it really depends on what you're trying to invest in, and what you're hoping to achieve. In our case, it's really quite clear. We're looking for exceptional individuals. We invest at day zero. We're looking for people to come and build companies with us. It's a very clear group of people who are considering this and embarking on this journey. If you're a later stage fund, if you're a Series A fund, or you're starting a Series A fund, well, plainly, what you need to talk about is your expertise in the given in the given areas of industries or technologies in which you wish to invest, to indicate to founders that you're the right person, the right thought partner to be working alongside them.
Right, totally. So, from what I get from your answer, Antler is also a multi-stage VC firm. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, you're participating up until what round?
Up to Series C through our Elevate fund, right? So we have we invest early stage, pre-seed, across the 27 different locations that I mentioned earlier. And then essentially at the Series A, our breakout companies from our portfolio will receive investment from Elevate, and that's effectively our global follow-on fund. And then they will also invest in category leaders that are outside of Antler as well.
Right, absolutely. And you have been a successful founder yourself. You've had successful exits before, right? So, what would be your advice for early stage founder companies on how should they go about it? Any words of caution or things they should avoid, and what should they do?
Um, well, I think my advice would be that you need to be prepared for a very long and challenging and adventurous time. I mean, it's an adventure building a company. That's the best part about it. But no adventure comes without its share of risks and dangers and setbacks. And you need to be, psychologically and personally prepared for that. It takes a big toll on you, and and the people around you who need to support you as you build a company. I think that people who want to build need to be prepared for the sacrifice and the endurance that is required to build something great. It is, I think, shocking for a lot of first-time founders to realize that, although of course this is an industry that is, it's very sexy to a lot of people, and a lot of I think it was something like 40% of young people at Australian universities say they want to start their own business. So it's obviously got a lot of appeal, but in fact, it is an immensely challenging thing to do, and you need to be prepared for what's ahead.
Thank you for sharing that. And let's now quickly do the rapid fire round to close this out, wherein I'll ask you 5 quick questions about the investing you're doing, and you have to give 5 quick answers. Sounds good?
Great, sounds great.
Awesome. So the first one is, what are the sectors and regions you invest in?
One sector, great founders. Only focused on the best founders, and we don't care what sector they're in.
Right. And regions?
We're in every major technology ecosystem across all of the continents in which there is human habitation.
Right. Awesome. What's the typical stage of investment?
Pre-seed.
Great. What's the typical check size you put in?
Again, varies by market because we're in so many places. Anybody who's interested to work with us should check antler.co/apply.
Right. Where can founders apply for funding? I think it's the same link that you
It
shared.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Last one. Where can our listeners go and follow you?
Best place to come and meet me is on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with anybody. That's our business. So please find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes below. Thanks so much for making time for this, Bede, and I wish you happy investing.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.